The alarm clock broke the silence at 5:30 a.m. in Adelaide Cottage, the Wales family home. Catherine opened her eyes slowly, feeling her heart racing with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Today was not just any ordinary day. Today, her father-in-law Charles would officially become King of England, and her family would play a major role in this historic moment that millions of people around the world would watch. She slipped out of bed quietly, not wanting to wake William just yet. The house felt different this morning, filled with an energy that seemed to whisper that something extraordinary was about to happen. Catherine walked barefoot down the hallway, her silk pajamas making soft sounds against her legs as she moved toward the children's bedrooms. George's room was her first stop. At 10 years old, he was the most aware of what today meant for their family. She gently pushed open his door and found him already awake, staring up at the ceiling with wide eyes. His dark hair was messy from sleep, and his young face looked serious and thoughtful. "Good morning, my darling," Catherine whispered as she sat on the edge of his bed. "How are you feeling about today?" George turned to look at his mother, his expression showing both excitement and worry. "Mom, what if I do something wrong? What if I trip or forget what I'm supposed to do? Everyone will be watching." Catherine smoothed his hair gently and smiled with understanding. "You've practiced so many times, and you know exactly what to do. Remember, we'll all be together, and Grandpa Charles will be so proud to have you there supporting him." Next, she moved to Charlotte's room. Her 8-year-old daughter was still sleeping peacefully, her blonde hair spread across the pillow like sunshine. Charlotte had been talking about this day for weeks, especially about the beautiful dress she would wear. Catherine gently shook her shoulder. "Charlotte, sweetheart, it's time to wake up. Today is Coronation Day." Charlotte's eyes fluttered open, and immediately a huge smile spread across her face. "Is it really today, Mummy? Do I get to wear my special dress? Will there be lots of people?" "Yes, darling. Today is the day we've been preparing for. You're going to look absolutely beautiful, and you're going to make us all very proud." The biggest challenge came with 5-year-old Louis. Catherine found him completely buried under his covers, with only a small tuft of his light brown hair visible. He was known for being the family's little comedian, but he was also notorious for not being a morning person. "Louis, my love, time to wake up," Catherine said softly, gently pulling back the covers. Louis immediately pulled them back over his head and mumbled something that sounded like "No, too early, want to sleep more." Catherine laughed quietly. This was exactly what she had expected. "But Louis, remember what we talked about. Today is Grandpa's special day, and he needs his brave grandson there with him. Can't Grandpa have his special day later? Like after lunch?" Louis's muffled voice came from under the blankets. Just then, William appeared in the doorway, already dressed in his casual morning clothes. His hair was slightly messy, and he had the look of someone who had also woken up with nervous excitement. He could see Catherine struggling with their youngest son and decided to help. "What's this I hear? Is there a little boy hiding in this bed who doesn't want to see airplanes flying over London today?" William said in a playful voice. Suddenly, the covers flew off, and Louis sat up with bright, interested eyes. "Airplanes? Real airplanes? Flying?" "Oh yes," William continued, sitting down next to his son. "Lots of airplanes, all flying in perfect lines across the sky. But only brave boys who get up and get dressed will be able to see them." Louis was now completely awake and excited. "I want to see the airplanes. I want to get dressed right now." Within minutes, all 3 children were out of their beds and the house came alive with activity. Catherine went to check on the breakfast preparations while William helped the boys find their slippers. Charlotte was already at her window, looking out at the early morning light and wondering how many people were already gathering in London. The family had spent weeks preparing for this day, practicing their roles and talking about how important it would be. But now that the morning had actually arrived, everything felt more real and more exciting than any of them had imagined. As Catherine walked back toward the kitchen, She could hear her family's voices mixing together with laughter, nervous chatter, and the sounds of a household preparing for the most important day of their lives. She took a deep breath, knowing that in just a few hours, they would be part of history. The master bedroom of Adelaide Cottage had been transformed into something that looked like a royal dressing room from a fairy tale movie. Catherine's stunning sapphire blue dress hung perfectly on a special padded hanger, the fabric catching the morning light and shimmering like water. The dress had been designed specifically for this historic day, with every detail planned to perfection. Beside it, William's full military uniform waited on its own stand. The red jacket with its golden buttons and decorative braiding looked impressive and formal. His polished black boots stood at attention nearby, so shiny they reflected the ceiling lights. The sight of these clothes made everything feel more real and more important. Catherine sat at her dressing table while her personal hairdresser worked carefully on creating the perfect hairstyle. The woman had arrived at 6 in the morning, carrying bags full of special brushes, pins, and hair products. Catherine watched in the mirror as her hair was styled into an elegant arrangement that would look beautiful under her hat. "Mrs. Wales, your hair looks absolutely perfect today," the hairdresser said as she carefully placed each strand exactly where it needed to be. "The style will photograph beautifully from every angle." Meanwhile, in the children's rooms, getting 3 young people ready for such an important event was proving to be quite an adventure. George stood very still in his room, while a tailor made final adjustments to his navy blue suit. The 10-year-old looked remarkably grown up in his formal clothes, though he kept fidgeting with his tie. "George, you look like a proper young gentleman," the tailor said with approval. "Your grandfather will be so proud when he sees how handsome and mature you look today." George smiled at the compliment, but still felt nervous. The suit felt different from his regular clothes, more serious and formal. He practiced walking in his dress shoes, trying to make sure he would not trip during any of the important moments. In Charlotte's room, the scene was much more animated. The 8-year-old was practically glowing with excitement as she looked at her special dress. The white outfit with silver embroidered details was the most beautiful thing she had ever worn. It made her feel like a real princess from one of her favorite storybooks. "Mummy, I love my dress so much. It's the prettiest dress in the whole world," Charlotte announced as Catherine came to help her get ready. Catherine smiled as she helped her daughter step carefully into the dress. "You look absolutely beautiful, my darling. Remember to walk slowly and gracefully, just like we practiced." Charlotte nodded seriously, then immediately started practicing her royal wave in the mirror. She had been working on this wave for weeks, making sure it looked elegant and proper. The biggest challenge was happening in Louis's room. The 5-year-old looked adorable in his miniature version of George's suit, but he was having trouble with several aspects of getting dressed up. His tie felt too tight around his neck, his shoes felt too stiff, and he kept trying to unbutton his jacket. "Louis, you need to keep your jacket buttoned," William said patiently as he helped his youngest son for the 3rd time. "Remember, today is very special, and we all need to look our very best." "But Daddy, it feels funny, and I can't move my arms properly," Louis complained, demonstrating by trying to reach up high and showing how the jacket restricted his movement. William knelt down to Louis's level and spoke gently. "I know it feels different from your regular clothes, but this is what princes wear on very important days. You're going to be the most handsome 5-year-old prince in all of England today." This made Louis giggle and feel better about his formal outfit. He practiced standing up straight and putting his hands at his sides like his father had shown him. Back in the master bedroom, Catherine was putting on her jewelry. Each piece had been chosen carefully to complement her dress and to photograph well. Her earrings caught the light beautifully, and her necklace added just the right amount of elegance without being too flashy. As the family gathered together in the hallway, all dressed in their coronation outfits, they looked like something from a royal portrait. Catherine felt a surge of pride looking at her beautiful family, all dressed up and ready to be part of history. The morning sun streamed through the windows, making everyone's clothes look even more special and creating a magical atmosphere as they prepared to leave for Westminster Abbey. The black royal car sat waiting outside Adelaide Cottage like a polished jewel. Its windows were specially tinted, and small Union Jack flags fluttered from the front corners. The driver, dressed in his finest uniform, opened the doors with white-gloved hands as the Wales family approached their vehicle. Catherine helped the children settle into their seats while William made sure everyone was comfortable and secure. The car smelled like expensive leather and fresh flowers. Louis immediately pressed his small face against the cool window, his eyes growing wide as he saw police motorcycles lining up around their car. "Money, why are there so many police?" Louis asked, his voice filled with curiosity rather than fear. "They're here to keep us safe and to help us get to the Abbey," Catherine explained gently, smoothing down Charlotte's dress as she spoke. As their car began to move slowly down the driveway, George noticed something incredible happening outside. People were everywhere. They lined both sides of the road, some holding small British flags, others carrying signs with messages of support for the royal family. Many had been waiting since very early in the morning, some even camping overnight to get the best spots. The crowd's excitement was infectious. As soon as people saw the royal car approaching, they began waving enthusiastically and cheering. Some held up their phones to take pictures, while others simply wanted to be part of this historic moment. Charlotte was absolutely delighted by all the attention. She waved back at the people with the perfect royal wave she had been practicing for weeks. Her small hand moved gracefully from side to side, and her bright smile made many people in the crowd point at her with joy. "Look at all the pretty decorations," Charlotte exclaimed, pointing at the red, white, and blue bunting that hung from lamp posts and buildings all along their route. The streets of London had been transformed for Coronation Day. Shop windows were decorated with royal themes, and flower arrangements in the colors of the British flag created a festival atmosphere. Street vendors sold coronation souvenirs, and temporary stages had been set up where local choirs sang patriotic songs. George sat quietly, taking in everything he saw but feeling the weight of responsibility on his young shoulders. He knew that people were not just celebrating his grandfather becoming king, but they were also looking at him as someone who would be important to the country's future. William and Catherine held hands as they watched their children experiencing this extraordinary day. They remembered their own wedding day when they had traveled this same route to Westminster Abbey, but today felt even more significant. This was about the future of the monarchy and their family's role in British history. "Daddy, there are so many people I can't count them all," Louis announced, still with his face pressed to the window. The crowds grew thicker as they got closer to Westminster Abbey. Television crews from around the world had set up cameras on rooftops and balconies. Reporters spoke into microphones, describing the scene for millions of viewers watching from home. Police officers on horseback rode alongside their car, their horses stepping proudly in perfect formation. The sight of these magnificent animals added to the ceremonial feeling of the journey. Catherine pointed out famous London landmarks to help distract the children from any nervousness they might be feeling. Big Ben stood tall in the distance, and the Thames River sparkled in the morning sunshine. As Westminster Abbey came into view, the family fell silent for a moment. The ancient church looked absolutely magnificent, decorated with thousands of flowers and golden ornaments that gleamed in the sunlight. Crowds of people filled every available space around the building, all hoping to catch a glimpse of the historic ceremony. The cars slowed down as they approached the Abbey entrance. Outside, photographers and camera crews were positioned everywhere, ready to capture every moment of their arrival. "Are you all ready?" William asked his family as their car came to a gentle stop. Three young voices answered together with excitement and determination, ready to step out and become part of British royal history. The moment the car door opened outside Westminster Abbey, the Wales family stepped into what felt like a completely different world. The sound hit them first, a tremendous wave of cheering, camera clicks, and orchestral music that seemed to surround them from every direction. The ancient stone building rose above them like a magnificent castle from a storybook, its towers reaching toward the bright blue sky. Hundreds of photographers stood behind red ropes, their cameras flashing like stars twinkling in daylight. The clicking sounds merged together into one continuous rhythm as they captured every step the family took. Television cameras on tall stands followed their movement, broadcasting this historic moment to millions of people around the world. Louis held tightly to his mother's hand, his small fingers gripping hers as his eyes grew enormous at the sight before him. He had never seen so many people dressed in such fancy clothes all in one place. Women wore elegant dresses in every color imaginable, with hats that looked like works of art. Men in military uniforms stood at attention, their medals catching the sunlight and creating tiny rainbows. Money. Everyone looks like they're going to a party for kings and queens, Louis whispered, trying to take in everything at once. Charlotte walked with perfect posture, remembering all her lessons about how to behave at important events. She waved to the crowds with confidence, her smile bright and genuine. Several people in the crowd pointed at her and smiled back, charmed by her natural grace and beauty. Her white dress with silver details sparkled as she moved, making her look like a young princess from a fairy tale. George walked close to his father, trying to appear calm and mature despite feeling overwhelmed by the magnitude of the event. He could see important people from around the world, presidents, prime ministers, and other royal family members, all gathered for his grandfather's coronation. The responsibility of representing his family well weighed on his mind, but he stood tall and walked with dignity. William guided his family through the entrance of Westminster Abbey, with gentle touches on their shoulders and quiet words of encouragement. He nodded politely to dignitaries he recognized while keeping a protective eye on his children. The pride he felt watching his family handle this moment with such grace was overwhelming. Catherine moved elegantly beside her family, her sapphire blue dress flowing beautifully as she walked. She smiled warmly at the crowds and acknowledged other guests with graceful nods. Her presence seemed to calm the children, and her confidence helped them feel more secure in this extraordinary situation. Inside the abbey, the atmosphere was breathtaking. The ancient church had been transformed into something that looked like it belonged in a dream. Thousands of flowers in white, gold, and deep red created elaborate arrangements throughout the building. Golden decorations hung from the high stone arches, and colorful banners representing different parts of the British Commonwealth added splashes of bright color to the historic setting. The stained glass windows caught the morning light and painted rainbow patterns across the stone floors. The ceiling seemed to stretch up forever, supported by massive columns that had stood for hundreds of years. The organ music filled every corner of the building with rich, powerful sounds that made everyone feel the importance of the occasion. Famous people from around the world filled the wooden seats. The children recognized some faces from television and newspapers, but many others were important leaders they had only heard about in their history lessons. Everyone was dressed in their finest clothes, creating a sea of elegant fashion and ceremonial uniforms. Louis looked around with wonder at the enormous space, his head tilting back to see the high ceiling. "It's like being inside a giant's house," he whispered to Charlotte, who giggled quietly at his observation. Ushers in formal dress guided the Wales family to their special seats in the front section of the abbey. These seats had been chosen to give them the perfect view of the ceremony, while allowing the cameras to capture their reactions to this historic event. As they settled into their seats, Catherine adjusted the children's clothes one final time and reminded them in gentle whispers about sitting nicely and paying attention. The excitement in the air was almost touchable, and even the youngest members of the family could feel that they were about to witness something truly special. The organ music grew louder and more majestic, signaling that the coronation ceremony was about to begin. The Wales family sat together, ready to watch Charles officially become King of England in a tradition that had continued for over 1,000 years. The great doors of Westminster Abbey opened with a sound that echoed through the ancient building like thunder. Everyone in the congregation turned to watch as the coronation procession began. The Archbishop of Canterbury, dressed in magnificent golden robes that seemed to glow in the light, led a group of church officials down the long aisle toward the altar. Louis felt the deep organ music vibrating in his chest, making his heart beat faster with excitement. He had never heard sounds so powerful and beautiful. The music seemed to come from everywhere at once, filling the enormous space and making even whispered conversations impossible to hear. Charlotte sat perfectly still, her eyes wide with amazement, as she watched the ceremony unfold. The golden objects being carried in the procession caught her attention immediately. There were scepters that sparkled with jewels, crosses that gleamed like sunshine, and other treasures that looked like they belonged in a museum. She had seen pictures of these items in books, but seeing them in real life was completely magical. "Money, are those real gold?" Charlotte whispered as quietly as she could. Catherine nodded with a gentle smile, equally impressed by the magnificent display of ceremonial objects that had been used in British coronations for centuries. George watched everything with intense concentration, trying to remember every detail of this historic moment. He knew that one day, many years in the future, he might be sitting where his grandfather was about to sit. The thought was both exciting and scary, but mostly it made him feel proud to be part of such an important family tradition. When Charles finally appeared at the entrance of the abbey, the entire congregation stood up as one. He looked regal and dignified in his ceremonial robes, walking slowly and steadily down the aisle with perfect posture. The weight of history seemed to follow him with every step he took toward the coronation chair. William felt tears forming in his eyes as he watched his father approach the altar. This was the moment they had all been preparing for, the moment when Charles would officially become King Charles II. The pride and emotion he felt was overwhelming, and he reached for Catherine's hand for comfort and support. The coronation chair, carved from oak wood over 700 years ago, waited at the front of the abbey. It looked ancient and powerful, like a throne from the most important fairy tale ever told. Every British monarch for centuries had sat in this same chair during their coronation, connecting Charles to a tradition that stretched back through history. Louis tried his best to sit still and be quiet, but the ceremony was very long for a 5-year-old. He fidgeted with his suit jacket and swung his legs gently, trying not to make noise with his shoes. Catherine noticed his restlessness and gently placed her hand on his knee, giving him a reassuring smile that helped him feel calmer. The Archbishop of Canterbury began speaking in a voice that carried clearly throughout the abbey. His words were formal and traditional, some in languages that sounded old and mysterious. Even though the children didn't understand every word, they could feel the importance of what was being said. Charlotte was fascinated by the Archbishop's beautiful robes and the way he moved his hands when he spoke. Everything about the ceremony looked like it came from a history book, but here she was, watching it happen right in front of her eyes. As different parts of the ceremony took place, various officials brought forward the crown jewels. Each item had its own special meaning and history. The imperial state crown, covered with diamonds, rubies, and other precious stones, sparkled so brilliantly that it almost hurt to look at directly. George felt goosebumps on his arms as he realized he was watching something that very few people in history had ever seen. Most people only knew about coronations from pictures or movies, but he was actually there, watching his grandfather become king. The music changed throughout the ceremony, sometimes soft and gentle, other times powerful and triumphant. A choir of voices joined the organ, singing songs that had been sung at coronations for hundreds of years. The combination of music and ceremony created an atmosphere that felt almost magical. Louis leaned against his mother's arm when he got tired, but he kept his eyes open, not wanting to miss anything important. Even at 5 years old, he could tell that this was not an ordinary day, and he wanted to remember everything that happened. As the ceremony continued, the Wales family sat together in their front row seats, feeling honored to be part of this historic moment, while Charles prepared to receive the crown that would make him king. As the coronation ceremony continued, The whale's children showed the world exactly why people had fallen in love with them. Their natural personalities and sweet family interactions became some of the most memorable parts of the entire historic day. Louis, being only 5 years old, was struggling with the challenge of sitting still for such a long ceremony. His little legs were getting restless, and he started shifting in his seat, trying to find a more comfortable position. His formal clothes, which had looked so perfect earlier, were now feeling tight and uncomfortable around his neck and arms. The ceremony had been going on for what felt like hours to a young child, and Louis began fidgeting with his tie, trying to loosen it without making too much noise. His movements caught the attention of television cameras, and millions of viewers around the world smiled as they watched the little prince dealing with the same struggles any 5-year-old would have in such a formal situation. Charlotte, sitting right next to her little brother, immediately noticed his discomfort. Like the perfect big sister she had always been, she quietly reached over and helped him straighten his collar, which had gotten twisted during his fidgeting. She whispered something in his ear that made him smile and settle down for a few more minutes. "Sit up straight like this," Charlotte demonstrated with her own perfect posture, showing Louis how to look proper and comfortable at the same time. Her gentle guidance and caring attitude toward her younger brother melted hearts around the world. George, at 10 years old, was taking his role as the eldest child very seriously. He sat with remarkable maturity, his back straight, and his attention focused on the ceremony happening in front of them. He had clearly been thinking about his responsibilities as a future member of the royal family, and his behavior showed wisdom beyond his years. When Louis started getting sleepy from sitting still for so long, he naturally leaned toward his mother for comfort. Catherine immediately responded by gently rubbing his back in small, soothing circles. Her motherly instincts took over completely, and she managed to comfort her son while still maintaining her elegant posture and attention to the ceremony. The sweet interaction between mother and son was captured by cameras, showing the world that even in the most formal royal settings, Catherine remained a loving and attentive mother first and foremost. Her ability to balance her royal duties with her parenting responsibilities impressed everyone watching. During one particularly long part of the ceremony, Louis made a face that was absolutely hilarious. His expression showed exactly what he thought about having to sit still for so long, and his honest reaction was so funny that Charlotte had to cover her mouth with her small hand to hide her giggles. The sight of Charlotte trying not to laugh while Louis made silly faces became one of the most shared moments from the entire coronation. People around the world loved seeing these natural, unscripted moments that showed the children were just regular kids, despite being part of the royal family. William and Catherine exchanged proud looks as they watched their children handling such an important and challenging situation. They could see George's growing maturity, Charlotte's natural grace and kindness, and Louis's honest, childlike reactions to everything happening around him. Charlotte took her role as middle child seriously, helping both her older and younger brothers when they needed support. She quietly shared her program with George when he dropped his, and she continued to check on Louis throughout the ceremony to make sure he was okay. When the music became particularly loud and dramatic, Louis's eyes went wide with amazement. He looked up at the enormous ceiling of Westminster Abbey as if he was trying to figure out where all the incredible sounds were coming from. His wonder and curiosity about everything happening around him reminded everyone watching that this was truly a magical experience. George occasionally leaned toward his father to ask quiet questions about different parts of the ceremony. William answered in whispers, clearly proud that his eldest son was genuinely interested in understanding the importance of what they were witnessing. The children's behavior throughout the ceremony showed their different personalities perfectly. George's thoughtfulness, Charlotte's caring nature, and Louis's innocent honesty combined to create moments that felt both royal and completely relatable to families everywhere. These unplanned, natural interactions between the whale's children became the heart of the coronation coverage, reminding everyone that behind all the formal ceremony and historic tradition, This was ultimately about a family supporting each other through one of the most important days of their lives. After the magnificent coronation ceremony ended, the Wales family made their way through the corridors of Buckingham Palace toward one of the most anticipated moments of the entire day. The famous balcony appearance was a tradition that millions of people around the world had been waiting to see, and the excitement in the palace was absolutely electric. The children could hear the enormous crowd outside, even from inside the palace. The sound was like nothing they had ever experienced before. Thousands and thousands of voices all cheering and singing together, creating a wall of joyful noise that seemed to shake the very walls of the ancient building. Louis was practically bouncing with excitement as they walked down the long palace hallways. The formal ceremony had been beautiful but long and quiet, and now he could feel that something much more fun and exciting was about to happen. He kept asking his parents when they would get to see all the people outside. "Daddy, how many people are out there? Are there more people than at the football stadium?" Louis asked, his young mind trying to understand the size of the crowd waiting for them. William smiled at his son's enthusiasm. "There are many, many more people than at any football stadium, Louis. They're all here because they're excited about Grandpa becoming king, and they want to see our family together." Charlotte was carefully holding the sides of her dress as she walked, making sure she wouldn't trip on the long palace carpets. She had been practicing her royal wave all morning, and now she was finally going to use it in front of the biggest audience of her life. The excitement made her feel like butterflies were dancing in her stomach. George walked quietly beside his parents, feeling the weight of responsibility that came with being the future heir to the throne. He knew that photographs from today would be in history books forever, and he wanted to make sure he represented his family with dignity and grace. As they approached the famous balcony doors, palace staff members made final adjustments to everyone's clothes. Catherine's dress was smoothed perfectly, William's uniform was checked one last time, and each child's outfit was inspected to ensure they looked absolutely perfect for the cameras. Catherine knelt down in front of her children for a final moment of preparation. "Remember everything we practiced," she said gently. "Smile naturally, wave slowly and gracefully, and stay close together so we can all be in the photographs." The sound of the crowd grew louder and more excited as palace staff prepared to open the balcony doors. The children could hear people singing "God Save the King" and other patriotic songs, mixed with cheering and the sound of bands playing music in the distance. When the doors finally opened, the noise hit them like a wave. The sight that greeted the Wales family was absolutely incredible. The Mall, the long road leading to Buckingham Palace, was completely filled with people as far as anyone could see. Red, white, and blue flags waved everywhere, and the crowd stretched back toward Trafalgar Square like a colorful river of celebration. Louis's mouth fell open in amazement. "Mummy, there are so many people I can't count them all. They go on forever and ever." The family stepped out onto the balcony together, and the crowd's cheering became even louder. People were pointing up at them, taking photographs with their phones, and waving flags enthusiastically. Many had tears of joy in their eyes, thrilled to be witnessing this historic moment. Charlotte immediately began her practiced royal wave, moving her hand gracefully from side to side with a bright, genuine smile on her face. She looked absolutely radiant in her white dress, and the crowd responded with extra cheers and applause specifically for her. George stood tall and waved more formally, occasionally nodding politely to different sections of the crowd. His mature behavior impressed everyone watching, and many people commented on how grown-up and responsible he appeared. William and Catherine waved to the crowd while keeping protective eyes on their children. They could see the joy and excitement on people's faces, and they felt overwhelmed by the love and support being shown to their family. The most magical moment came when the Royal Air Force flew overhead in perfect formation. Military aircraft of different types created precise patterns in the sky above Buckingham Palace, leaving trails of white smoke against the blue sky. The crowd cheered even louder as the planes passed overhead, and all three children looked up in wonder at the spectacular display. Louis pointed excitedly at each plane as it flew by, while Charlotte clapped her hands together with delight. George watched with fascination, understanding that this flyover was a special honor reserved for the most important royal occasions. The balcony appearance lasted for several minutes, giving everyone in the crowd time to see the family clearly and take photographs to remember this historic day. As they finally waved goodbye and stepped back inside the palace, all three children were glowing with excitement from the incredible experience they had just shared with the world. After hours of public ceremonies, formal procedures, and being watched by millions of people around the world, the Wales family finally found themselves in a private sitting room at Buckingham Palace. The contrast between the public spectacle and this quiet family moment was remarkable, and everyone felt a sense of relief as they could finally relax and be themselves. The first thing Louis did was kick off his formal dress shoes, which had been bothering his feet for most of the day. He wiggled his toes in his socks and immediately started running around the elegant room, releasing all the energy he had been holding back during the long ceremony. "My feet feel so much better now," Louis announced loudly, making his parents laugh as he demonstrated his newfound freedom by doing a little dance across the Persian carpet. Charlotte was still wearing her beautiful white dress, but she had relaxed her perfect posture and was now sitting comfortably in a large armchair. She kept touching the silver embroidery on her dress, still amazed that she had worn something so special and beautiful on such an important day. "Mummy, can I wear this dress again sometime? Maybe to my next birthday party?" Charlotte asked hopefully, clearly not ready to say goodbye to her coronation outfit. Catherine smiled as she watched her daughter's continued fascination with her special dress. "We'll keep it safe always, darling. It's a very special dress for a very special day, and you looked absolutely beautiful wearing it." George had loosened his tie and unbuttoned the top button of his shirt, but he was still sitting thoughtfully, processing everything that had happened. The weight of the day's significance was still on his mind, and he had many questions about what it all meant for their family's future. "Dad, what happens now that Grandpa is officially the king? Will things be different for us?" George asked with the serious curiosity that was typical of his thoughtful personality. William sat down next to his eldest son, grateful for this opportunity to have a real conversation away from all the cameras and crowds. "Some things will change, George, but the most important things will stay the same. We'll still be a family who loves each other, and we'll still do our best to help people and serve our country." Catherine had asked the palace kitchen to prepare some of the children's favorite foods, knowing that after such a long and formal day, they would appreciate familiar comfort food rather than fancy palace cuisine. Simple sandwiches, fresh fruit, and biscuits appeared on silver trays, and the children ate with much more enthusiasm than they had shown for the formal breakfast that morning. Louis climbed onto his father's lap while eating a strawberry, getting comfortable in a way that would never have been possible during the public portions of the day. William hugged his youngest son close, treasuring these normal family moments that felt so precious after hours of formal ceremony. The family gathered around Catherine's phone to look at photographs and videos that had already been posted online from the day's events. They laughed at pictures of Louis making funny faces during the ceremony, smiled at how elegant Charlotte looked waving from the balcony, and marveled at how grown-up George appeared in his formal suit. "Look at this one," Catherine said, showing them a photo of all three children sitting together during the ceremony. "You can see how beautifully you all behaved, even when it was difficult to sit still for so long." Louis giggled at a video of himself looking amazed during the airplane flyover. "I look so surprised. Those airplanes were so loud and so fast." Charlotte found a photograph of herself helping Louis with his collar during the ceremony. "I didn't know the cameras could see me helping Louis. I was just trying to be a good big sister." The family spent time calling other relatives who had watched the ceremony on television. Grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins all wanted to share their excitement and tell the children how proud they were of their behavior during such an important day. William's grandmother had left a special message saying how impressed she was with how well the children had represented the family. Charlotte beamed with pride when she heard this, and even Louis seemed to understand that he had done something very good. As the afternoon sunlight streamed through the tall palace windows, the Wales family enjoyed these precious private moments together. They knew that this day would be remembered in history books forever, but for them, the most important part was being together as a family during one of the most significant days of their lives. The formal clothes, the crowds, the cameras, and the ceremony had all been magnificent, but these quiet moments of connection, laughter, and love were what made the day truly special for each member of the Wales family. As the evening settled over London, the Wales family returned to the peaceful atmosphere of Adelaide Cottage. The contrast between their quiet home and the grandeur of Westminster Abbey and Buckingham Palace made everything feel dreamlike, as if they had just returned from the most incredible adventure imaginable. Getting the children ready for bed after such an extraordinary day became a special time for sharing thoughts, feelings, and memories that would last forever. Each child processed the day's events in their own unique way, and their parents listened with patience and love to every question and observation. Louis was the most exhausted of the three children, but his mind was still buzzing with excitement from everything he had experienced. As Catherine helped him into his comfortable pajamas, he could barely keep his eyes open, yet he kept talking about all the amazing things he had seen. "Mummy, were those real diamonds on Grandpa's crown? They were so sparkly they looked like stars," Louis said sleepily, rubbing his eyes as he tried to stay awake long enough to share all his thoughts. "Yes, darling, those were real diamonds and other precious stones. The crown is very old and very special, and now Grandpa gets to wear it, because he's the king," Catherine explained gently as she tucked him under his favorite blankets. Charlotte was in her bedroom, carefully hanging up her special coronation dress on a padded hanger. She touched the silver embroidery one more time, still hardly believing that she had worn something so beautiful and important. She had already asked her mother 3 times if they could take photographs of the dress, so she would never forget how it looked. "Mummy, do you think I'll ever get to wear another dress that special?" Charlotte asked as Catherine brushed her long hair before bed. "You looked absolutely beautiful today, my darling. There will be other special occasions in your life, but this dress will always be unique, because it was for Grandpa's coronation day," Catherine replied, braiding Charlotte's hair gently. George was sitting on his bed in his pajamas, but his mind was clearly still working through the deeper meaning of everything that had happened. As the future heir to the throne, he understood better than his younger siblings that today had been about more than just a beautiful ceremony. "Dad, when I watched Grandpa receive the crown today, I kept thinking about how someday that might be me. It feels scary and exciting at the same time," George confided to William as they sat together in his bedroom. William felt proud of his son's thoughtful approach to understanding his future responsibilities. "It is a big responsibility, George, but you don't need to worry about it now. You have many years to learn and grow, and your mother and I will help you every step of the way." As Catherine moved from room to room, sitting on each child's bed for their individual bedtime conversations, she felt overwhelmed with love and pride for how well her children had handled such a monumental day. Each of them had shown their best qualities: George's maturity and thoughtfulness, Charlotte's grace and kindness, and Louis's natural joy and curiosity. Louis was fighting sleep as he lay in his bed, still wanting to talk about the airplanes that had flown over Buckingham Palace. "Daddy, can we see those airplanes again tomorrow? Will they come back?" William smiled as he sat beside his youngest son's bed. "Those airplanes were there just for today, for Grandpa's special day. But we can look at pictures and videos of them whenever you want to remember how amazing they looked." Charlotte fell asleep with a smile on her face, dreaming about waving to crowds of people and wearing beautiful dresses. Her natural grace and poise during the day had impressed everyone who saw her, and she felt proud of how well she had represented her family. George lay in his bed, thinking about the weight of history he had witnessed and his own place in the long line of British royalty. The ceremony had made him feel more connected to his heritage and more aware of the importance of his family's role in their country's future.